The Freemasons are a fraternal society. Their origins date back to the late 1300s, but are believed in some cases to date much further back in the past. Two Masons I spoke to gave me a far better insight on their origin. I will let Larry Bent, a junior warden of Lodge 166, explain. So, how did the Masons come to be?
Oh.
It's very,
wow.
weird, they may have been around at this point, they may not have been,
Okay, so there's a lot of, without the advent of a time machine, there's no way to really know. There's a lot of everything mixed into Masonry. You'll hear that they're Templar based. You'll hear that they were pre-King Solomon. We say that we start with King Solomon and building of Solomon's temple. There is some truths to that. Because those older schools, they were also esoteric or theologic schools, and they're building buildings. They got together in lodge for dinners, to sleep. They lived in it, basically. And to keep them out of trouble, they, were introduced to different ideological beliefs and things like that, and it just kind of grows. So we took, like I said, the first lodge, Edinburgh, Scotland. They have meeting notes back to the late early 1500s. The Regius manuscript is a huge, 32-page poem based on Masonry. Modern, what we would consider modern Masonry. That was carbon dated, I believe, to 1390.
So a very long portion of history has been shared with the Masons. We asked Lodge 166's worshipful master, or leader of the lodge, Keith Anderson, a similar question. Sadly, he was stuck at work, so we had to do an interview over the phone while we were at the lodge. Here was his response.
What that could be like?
Oh, man, that is a long answer. But I'll take you through the highlights that I know or believe. Okay. Because, unfortunately, not a lot of documentation of Freemasonry exists back before 1717. But basically in the late 17th century, you see a transition between what are called operative lodges of Masons, men who actually go out and cut stone and build buildings, to what we call the speculative Masonry, which is where men primarily talk about learning, spirituality, all of the things that came out of the Enlightenment around science and education and those kinds of things. So if you go back 300 years, you have the birth of the Grand Lodge of England, which is the, quote, official start of speculative Masonry. But when you look at the documentation that does exist, going back to, I think the earliest one I've read about is the early 1300s. There's a transition period of men going from being operative Masons to speculative Masons, even though you have a lot of traditions and rules and things like that that get carried forward in that documentation. Then you have to get back before that to get into the theoretical origins of Masonry. And there are literally dozens of authors who can walk it back to, some historical point in time. You pick the one you like, the building of King Solomon's temple, or you can go back earlier than that to a lot of the work that was done in Egypt. It's very easy to find someone who says, oh yeah, it goes back to the beginning of time. I look at it more allegorically, that those lessons that we're carrying forward are ancient lessons and not so much that, we were organized as Masonic lodges in 4000 BC, but more a matter of mankind has been studying reality and studying the spiritual world and studying how men should live together since the beginning of time, and we're preserving those lessons through a very long history of traditions, rituals, and concepts. So, you pick a date and then we can talk about it, but the way I look at it is Masonry goes back to, from the standpoint of being called Masonry, probably to the early 1300s.
Gotcha. So with the origins now known, why would someone want to study them? Well, this knowledge, which is basic for them, is completely unknown to someone who is not a Mason. Hudson Williams, a history teacher who was passionate about his job, really had no clue about their origins, but he gave it his best shot.
Well, I know that they were supposed to be kind of like considered, like you were talking about, a subculture of, it starts in the colonies, the original 13 colonies with these guys, where they were supposedly the framers of the Constitution and the elite gentlemen of their day, where they would meet in secrecy and decide a lot of the policies and diplomacies that were happening amongst the colonies between England and themselves. And again, this is, if you ever see the Freemasons temples, not a lot of windows in them.
No.
So yeah. Right, because they were, again, this was all supposed to be like a secret society. And with anything in the world, historically, with anything that's secret society, anytime that happens, you're going to have all kinds of myths.
All
kinds of ideas. They're doing this, they're doing that. But I don't really think that that's what it was. I mean, from what I know about them, it was just a group of people who were like-minded, politically, socially, culturally, who got together and discussed certain matters.
To someone outside of the Masonic community, almost nothing is known. For instance, Mr. Williams later spoke of how his grandfather was a Shriner, but did not believe to have any Masonic lineage. He simply did not know that in order to be a Shriner, you not only had to be a Mason, but a third-degree Master Mason. Cooper Ricebeck also found out that his grandfather was a Mason, a third-degree Master Mason as well, gaining higher degrees up to, I believe, the 33rd. This gave him a reason to research the topic. I, however, have always had interest. And something to note before we continue is that no one person speaks on behalf of Masonry. Everything is personal and individualized. So, inside the actual sense of Masonry of this, how does the ranking system work?
There's really no rank. I mean, there is, but there isn't.
Okay.
You go through the chairs, and by that, there's different stations, if you will. And it's a matter of progression with hopeful growth. When you get to what we call Worshipful Master, or in the East, that's the highest you're going to get in the lodge. It's your brothers vote on you to put you into that position. And what they're actually looking at when they vote is, has he learned enough? Does he, not just about Masonry, but about himself? Because he's leading the lodge for the next year. And they only do it for a year because they really don't want nobody getting any power trips or anything like that. We're human, it happens. Mm-hmm. But the ideology is, have you learned enough organizational skills to get all these things done? Have you learned enough speaking skills to be in charge of the lodge for a full year? Have you learned enough how to interact with others? We have an extremely diverse group. And sometimes language is a barrier. Sometimes, I went to a lodge in Mexico that I don't speak Spanish. I just wanted to see the lodge. But they were having lodge that night. So they decided they would do the whole lodge in English as much as they could. But to prove that I was a brother master mason, they had me set up the lodge. They just put everything in the middle and had me set it up. That was the worshipful master saying, hey, we've got a visitor, don't just show him the lodge, let's show him who we are. And these are things that you learn as you go. So,
as far as specific terminology goes, a lot of things are referred to in different ways, and this is for ceremony and affirmation reasons. In this next clip with Larry Bent, he elaborates a lot more and throws in a small history lesson about it. What terminology is used that's different from like normal language? Like the dinner I was here, you guys ended prayer differently.
With so mote it be. You'll hear a lot of archaic speech.
Okay.
Worshipful master. It's not because we worship him. In England, in the courts, the judge presiding over the court is called most worshipful. It's a throwback from those days. Same thing with so mote it be. When you say a prayer, because that's what we did, because we end all of our prayers with so mote it be, other than the chaplain says amen. When you say so mote it be, it's an affirmation. It's not just an affirmation of, yeah, I heard it. It's an affirmation of, yeah, I felt it. Those words also resonated through me, through that prayer. In the olden days, it was so may it be. And that's also an English throwback. You'll see that a lot, which just drives the Scots nuts, because the first lodge was in Edinburgh in the 1500s, the first known lodge, late 1400s. So they say they're the first, but the Grand Lodge, the first Grand Lodge, was in England, so we use a lot of English, our old archaic English. Sometimes it feels like fluent drunkenese, sometimes it feels like straight poetry, and sometimes it's straight legalese. It's just, but yeah, there's a lot of older archaic words and the meanings behind them. We don't say amen, because amen is ancient Egyptian for in hiding. So when you ended a prayer with amen, you're saying, yeah, I'm saying this quietly, because if I get caught, they're going to behead me. It's also a throwback to Amen-Ra, the sun god. Amen, Amen, Amen-Ra. So we say it as an affirmation instead of, because we're not in hiding. We'll throw our fellowship right out there in the open. We believe in deity. So you have to.
Since the only way I knew about the Masons was through things like National Treasure, I was very interested in knowing how they discovered Masonry and why they joined.
Well, I had a number of reasons. One of them is that my father and both my grandfathers were Masons, and, it's kind of a family tradition kind of a thing. I was also curious about the so-called secrets of Masonry and, what kind of things that you learn. I was also looking for something that I could dedicate my time and my energies to that was outside of just what you do in the working world, something that has more of an intrinsic return, creating value for the world rather than just, doing what we do for a living. So those were three of the four big ones.
Gotcha. Larry was also talking about how one of his main reasons is just like searching for the ability to help and give, and you have that same thing as well. Is that common throughout all of the brothers?
I would say it's common. I wouldn't say it's all of the brothers. Everybody has their own set of reasons, but that's one that you see quite a bit. men looking to be a member of something that's bigger, greater, longer lasting than what they're involved in today.
Why did you become a Mason?
You'll find most Masons are in either now or were in some form of service related job, service to others. They have this, almost all of Masons I have ever met, they have this innate, I want to help. I was a vet. You'll find a lot of cops. You'll find a lot of fire department, a lot of EMTs, people who just, the biggest is the group who they work behind a desk in IT all day. They're not really giving, so they come here so they can give. It fulfills that inherent need to give to another. I came because when I left the military, I had an NCO, or a non-commissioned officer, who was probably one of the men I admired the most in my entire life. It didn't matter what was going on. It didn't matter how goofy things got or how bad things got. He had this, I don't know, just a way that you were calm. He was always calm. He knew things. He understood things. He was a true gentleman. Understood how to treat ladies. He'd still open doors and things like that. He showed me how to be a real man. That it's okay to have faith out there. It's okay to be a gentleman. It's okay to not act like an imbecile when you're out with your buddies. And it was okay to have that quiet confidence. And I think that's what got me the most, was the quiet confidence. And I asked him one day, where'd you get all this? Is that family? Is that just who you are? He goes, no. He said, I learned it. I said, where'd you learn it? Because I want to learn something like that. He said, I'm a Mason. Okay, so let me do my research. And unfortunately, there's so many bad things out there online about it.
Yeah.
But there's also good. You got to kind of sort through. Half of it's BS, 90% of it's BS. So talking to Masons like you guys are doing now, it's the same thing I did. What is this about? What is it for you? Why would I want it? But yeah, after seeing how he lived his life, even in combat situations, and it just didn't change. He's the most calm, knowing, confident individual I've ever met in my life. And it left a huge lasting impression. I wanted to be that guy. Not everybody does, but I wanted to be that guy. That's what brought me.
What is to gain from this fellowship is different for everyone. Even just between these two men, what they gained was very different. Mr. Anderson gained a lot of skill sets, including leadership skills. Mr. Ben got security, which led to this very heartwarming story. Here are both.
Great question, and somebody asked me that recently, and I was caught a little flat-footed, so hopefully I'm a little better prepared now. So, I've always considered myself a fairly moral person, moral and ethical, but one of the things that Freemasonry has done is it's given me the opportunity to focus on it and maintain that moral compass, and given me a ruler by which to make decisions in line with my ethics and morality. So that's a big one. I think it's also taught me a lot about the nature of people. I've always been very interested in people, but in a lot of ways I've found them confusing. But you learn some principles about how men should treat each other in order for them to remain in harmony. I think that's been a big one. I think some of the leadership experiences, the skills that you get, and the lessons that you learn in leading a lodge are they're very applicable to any other kind of leadership situation. You know, treating people fairly, valuing their expertise, their knowledge, their creativity. Those things help you outside of the fraternity just as much as they help you inside it. I could probably go on with lots of individual examples, but those are probably the big ones.
What other types of benefits have come from being a Mason, joining the Masonic family?
All the benefits, honestly, are in your head. Literally. Sometimes your soul. There's no monetary benefit. Actually, you lose money because you got to pay dues. There's no, I don't want to say education benefit, because there's a huge education benefit, but there's no degrees. Nothing you can put on your resume. Hey, I know this. I have a bachelor's in this. No. The benefits are solely personal. You reap exactly what you sow. When I first started, I could not talk to a group of more than 5 people. Just couldn't do it. I'd clam up, start shaking. I'm a vet. To handle anything more than 5 people, especially have to talk to them, forget it. I was done. But now I teach classes, the whole 9 yards. I'm heavy into history, heavy into theology and theosophy. And they give me a place to share that with others to help me grow. And it helps them grow. So really all your benefits are internal. There's no external benefits. The ring gets heavy, you whack it on all kinds of stuff. I can't wear it for work. But all the benefits are internal. They really are. And I think that's, everybody says there's a secret. No, that's the secret right there. It's hard to explain what it does to an individual because it's separate for each individual. And that's the true secret. It's hard to explain how it's made me better, how it makes me feel. Sometimes I'll just have a bad day at work, sit down here for dinner, and sometimes the conversation's inappropriate, and sometimes we're shooting jabs at each other. But it's all done in fun and in family fun. And by the time I leave here, I feel so lifted just by hanging out with my brothers. Those are the benefits. The little emblems on the back of our car, yeah, we like showing off that we're Masons, but I don't have one on this car. But on my truck, I have one, and I blew an axle going up the hill. And I'm on the side of the road, there's police passing me, everybody's passing me, and all of a sudden here comes this truck, pulls in behind me, he goes, "What's wrong, bro?" And just by his ring, his demeanor, I knew he was a brother. I was like, I gotta get off this hill. He helped me fix the truck, the whole 9 yards, and they're really good people.
You had similar scenarios with your daughters, right?
Yes. My middle daughter flipped her car end over end into a fella's field in Tennessee, which in the middle of nowhere, because, yeah, she was texting and driving, taught her car tricks. And literally nobody. She crawled. She wasn't hurt. She got out of the wreck, and like an acre of fence just toast. Mm-hmm. And nobody around. It's in the middle of the night. She's walking down the road. She comes to a driveway that actually had a Masonic symbol on the mailbox. So she went up to the house and she said, "My dad's a Mason." He said, "If I ever see this symbol, I could ask for help." And he, "Come on in, honey. What do you need? What happened?" Yeah, it happened to be his field.
that's pretty convenient.
Right? He took care of her. They called me. They put her up for the night until they could get somebody out there to tow the truck or the car out of the field, the whole 9 yards. He just treated her like one of his own. I knew everything that was going on because he called me. Hey, I got your girl. Cool, thank you.
That's awesome.
You know, that's family.
Yeah.
And that's what really it's all about. It's family.
As well as there are benefits, there's a lot that goes into obtaining them. Being able to stick with the fellowship has proven to be hard. Cooper Ricebeck's grandfather left the brotherhood because it, to him, became stupid. The way Larry explains the same obstacle made both Cooper and myself wonder if his grandfather would have stayed if he had been enlightened about the lessons like Larry.
Do you still agree with the choice to become a Mason? And I think
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. There was a time where I didn't. There was a time where I wanted to demit and walk away.
What was that?
When you first go through, your mentor is probably one of the most important people you're going to know. They're going to teach you what we call the catechism, okay? Basically, it's just reciting everything that happened to you for each degree. Everything you went through. They don't tell you what it means. A lot of times. We're trying to change that. Like I said, some of it sounds like fluent drunkenese, some of it's poetry, and some of it's legalese. What does this mean? We call that doing the work. Well, a lot of new brothers don't know they're supposed to do the work. So they don't know that they're supposed to try to understand what all this was. And like I said, we're trying to change that. Your mentor. We have one guy, he could teach you he could give you an eidetic memory. He's that good at teaching how to remember things. And he's awesome. But he doesn't teach it what it means. So then we've kind of come together and decided, okay, he can teach the words. So when we get him in lunch or evenings like this or something else, hey, call me on the phone if you have a question. There's a few of us who have researched it and learned it enough to know what it means. Hey, this is what it means. So when you're saying this, you're affirming this. You're doing this. And hopefully it's causing this. Hey, okay. Well, I didn't have that. And I didn't know I was supposed to do the work, any research or anything else. And I'm 2 years in and I'm like, this is stupid. I have gotten nothing out of it. And I was talking to one of the guys here and he goes, what do you mean you've got nothing out of it? I said, I got nothing. It makes no sense to me. It's hodgepodge of all these different little things. Why? Well, let's sit down, because somebody should have told you that. And he taught me. And what a huge difference. So your mentor makes the biggest difference.
The study of various cultures can certainly open my eyes to the world around me. Everyone has different interests, which means that there is a culture for everyone. Ranging from vegans to musicians to Freemasons, you will always fit in somewhere. Personally, if I want to find a new hobby or even meet some new people, learning about a new culture is a great way to accomplish that. Not only does learning about other cultures come with personal benefit, but an academic one as well. Having more knowledge in general never hurts. Although, when writing an essay, for example, having excessive knowledge is a great advantage. The writer can create endless references and examples from other cultures to better their writing. Just learning about them in general gives a bigger perspective of the world. Learning about new cultures is a great way to meet new friends, too. Having a common interest with someone is usually what brings people together in the first place. So what better way to meet new people than to share an interest in the same culture? All of my friends and I can certainly identify as members of multiple common cultures between us. That's why we're friends in the first place.
I always enjoy talking to them. Every Mason I've ever met has been a great guide. They have so much knowledge, especially Larry. From them, I now understand how the Masons came to be, a little bit of how they've influenced history and why a lot of men join. This gave me a better understanding of how ease of confrontation can be done. These men understand people. They study because it betters them and become brothers with people they may have never even met before. This was a great experience for me. Even though I'm not a Mason, I've made connections and friendships with some of them. I have new ways to approach learning and have a better insight on one part of this vast world.
Throughout the time we researched the Freemasons, we learned a lot about not only them as a group, but as men as well. When we first thought of looking into the Freemasons, in my head I pictured them as almost suspicious old men. However, in reality, they are just regular guys with regular lives. I also learned that a lot of members joined for self-improvement, while others joined solely for the social aspect. I learned that no matter which lodge you visit in the world, there will always be a huge range of diversity among the members. To them, a brother is a brother, no matter what color skin. I learned that by becoming a Freemason, your life can have a huge change, starting with yourself. Not only that, but the other members of the lodge can have a tremendous impact on you as well. They are willing to help you in any way they can, no matter the situation or circumstance. The Masons also help the community too. They spend millions of dollars annually on bettering and building places like hospitals. While they may seem scary from the outside, the Freemasons have nothing but good intent for themselves and the community around them. Being a Freemason takes a lot of dedication, however. If one wishes to join, they have to attend dinners for 6 months before they can join. Overall, I learned that there are plenty of aspects that come with being a Freemason, and all of them are positive.
Masonry does not care whether you are black, white, brown, purple, green. They don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. They don't care. What they care about is if you're a good human. And there's been 4 kings that were Masons. And they go through the line just like anybody else if they want to sit in the East. George Washington, funny story is, his gardener was master of the lodge during one of the years during the war, and he kept showing up late for lodge. Well, he's running the American Army.
Yeah.
He's showing up late for lodge, and so his gardener's chewing his butt. Where you been, man? And he brings the British admiral, who also happened to be a Mason, and they sit in lodge together. Because we come together as brothers when we come into this room. What happens during the day, that's during the day. When it's time to sit together for fellowship, we're brothers. You don't stand in front of that altar with an issue with your brother. You just can't. So we clear all that out of here. Civil War, taps. This is the military in me. But the kid who wrote Taps was a bugler. And he agreed with the Southern's reason for joining the war, which was states' rights. Not something that's generally taught anymore.
Right.
The Emancipation Proclamation didn't come out until like 2 years before the end of the war because the North was losing interest. And they were losing the war. His father had no idea he was serving in the South. His father was serving in the North. And there was a big battle, and they're both Masons. There was a big, huge battle. And you could hear this kid out there during the night crying. He'd been shot up pretty bad, and he was dying. And he recognized the voice as his son's. So he goes out there and pulls his son back into the line, into the American or North side lines, and went through. The son had died. At least they had a time to say goodbye. But during this time, the son had passed away. Found the notes handwritten for Taps, which is where we get Taps from. What they don't teach you in military is both of those men were Masons. And those Masons gave that young man a funeral with respect. Happened all the time. After a battle, you know what? It's Thursday night, guys. We gotta go to the lodge. Stop shooting. Okay. They stopped shooting. The Confederates stopped shooting. They all go to lodge.
Really?
They eat, they drink. We don't drink in Colorado. We're all dry. But they talk, they chit-chat. Next day, they're back out fighting.
Yeah.
But in this building, in the lodge room, your brothers, we don't care if you're a king, prince, potentate. If you make $100 million a year or $100 a year, when you're here, we're all the same.
There are a plethora of remaining questions that we still have. We asked the members all we could about the group from an outsider's standpoint. Although unless you become a member, there is no way to know what goes on within the lodge during the meetings and whatnot. The Masons are extremely secretive and keep a lot of information to themselves. With that being said, I still wonder what they meet about. Where does all their money come from? What do all of their secret signals and handshakes look like? Is there any chance that they had a hand in any major events in the world? Even though they denied all the conspiracies surrounding the group, could any of them really be true? The answers to these questions will never be found unless you do wish to join the Brotherhood, but if not, they will remain as mysteries.